Again, we're going to call the meeting to order. Order. Let's get the roll call. All right.
Chair
Yep.
Ford,
Here.
Vice Chair Dinan,
Here.
Member Kelly,
Here.
Member Ruiz,
Here.
and Member Qualls.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Actually, I want to say out of all the meetings I've been at, is this the most we've had at one meeting as far as members? All right, excellent. Thank you everyone for being here. All right, item number 3, remote participation due to emergency circumstances. Do we have anyone who requested remote participation?
We do not
Besides
have
staff.
anybody remote besides our staff.
Thank you. Public comment. Is there any members of the public for public comment?
I did not receive any public comments via email.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and close public comment. Move to item number 5. Motion to approve the Citizen Advisory Committee minutes of September 4th, 2024.
So moved.
I have a second. All right. We do a roll call?
Chair Ford,
Yes?
Vice Chair Dinan,
Yes.
Member Kelly,
Yes.
Member Ruiz,
Yes.
and Member Qualls.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have a 5-0 vote. The motion passes for consent.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to item number 6A. I'll turn that over to staff.
Okay, thank you. So this item, next slide, please, Josie. We're going to go over the fiscal year 2025, 2026 unmet transit needs process. And this is the kickoff to that process. And so I'm going to give you background. Some of you might have heard this before. It really doesn't change because it's a regulation that we must do every year, but I'll go along through it. If you have any questions as we go through, please stop me and I would be happy to answer anything along the way or afterwards as well. So the first slide is about STANCOG and the Transportation Development Act, or TDA, as we call it. That law requires that we annually do this process, the unmet transit needs process. And the requirements of the process is 1 public hearing, 1 or outreach. You must go out and do some outreach to persons that are riding the bus, to senior centers, different areas like that, so that you're getting feedback on any of the transit or transportation needs that are out there that we might not be aware of, and those are the could possibly be what we call an unmet transit need. Then we prepare this UTN, or unmet transit need analysis report. That's the final part of this, and then it kicks over into something else I'll talk about in a moment. So the STAC bylaws, the next slide, Josie. I won't read this one to you, but we have our bylaws, and the next couple of slides go over what those bylaws are. But essentially, what we're looking for in our outreach is engaging, sort of like we're doing right now, engaging the public to help us understand, is there something out there that we're missing? Is there something that we could do better in the community for transportation? One of those that has been a sort of a lingering, and we look at these comments year after year after year, and the way we formulate our report is we'll get comments this year and put it in the report, but what we'll also do is put the past 2 previous years in the report as well. And so if we see something that's happening over and over and over again, we understand that that's something that we should look at. And I'll explain, I guess, at the end. There's a new program through MOVE, which is the CTSA for Stanislaus County, which sort of goes back to transportation, some of the specialized transportation needs in the area. So the next slide goes over the bylaws again. As I said, what we do is we review and recommend what we find. There are transportation needs that we could say are unmet transit needs. Then what we need to figure out is, are they reasonable to meet or are they not? So oftentimes in having done this for 25 or so years, you'll find people make comments that are a little bit outrageous, if you will. I want to go to Disneyland on Saturdays, and I want, essentially a bus. I don't know. I think that's sort of not a reasonable thing to me. But those are the extreme. And then there are times when you do hear the same thing over and over and over again. And this is where I'll talk about the MOVE program. For years, and I know at the Commission on Aging, this was one of the big things I heard of being, have gone to the Commission on Aging meetings, is that there were island communities in our region where people needed to access going to the doctor, going to get food, whatever the case may be. But they're in these communities that have no transit services, often in these rural pockets of the county. And for the last couple of years, we had heard that, we really need to do something about this to help these people that live in these communities and that don't have a mechanism to get to life-sustaining type of things that they might need. And then recently, well, I don't know if it's recently, but about a year ago, the MOVE Stanislaus started a program called Care Cruisers. And that program actually goes out into those rural pockets and picks up people so that they can get these life-sustaining services that they need. They've had this program for a little over a year, but already it's expanding because the need is there. And so this is something, again, that we heard through, we do a coordination plan every few years. We heard that there, and then we've heard it, especially in the senior and disabled communities over the last few years. So that was an example of if they hadn't started the program, it might have become an unmet transit need that is reasonable to meet. And then I'll give you my favorite analogy of when there was some comments about a service for people that needed door-through-door service to get, because they couldn't ambulate out of their home or whatever the case may be. And this was really pivotal for two seniors in our community. I think both might have passed, but Jenny Canoyer and Mickey Peabody, who pushed this along. These fantastic women, and the Area Agency on Aging were very, very adamant about this is something that we need. And so we put that forward, and guess what? That's how we started MOVE, through this process. So you go from the extreme, I want to go to Disneyland, to you go to this other extreme where you need this service to really help people that need that specialized transportation service. It doesn't just need to be Stan RTA or Turlock Transit. It can really be anything where a person or a group of people aren't able to access some sort of service because there is no transportation for them. Okay, next slide, please. So this year, as you heard me say before, we need to do outreach as part of this effort. And this year, what we're doing is we used to go out and give presentations at a lot of the jurisdictions and city councils, and we found that might not be the best mechanism to really, really maximize our staff time. So what we're doing this year is we're focusing on social media through the virtual outreach that we, all of us have. So we'll be doing that, social media. And then we're great partners, thankfully, with MOVE, the agency I was just talking about. And they have individuals that go out and ride the bus every day. They teach people how to ride the bus. That's part of what their programs are, is teaching people how to ride the bus. So these MOVE employees are on the buses every day and seeing the folks that are really using the end user, using the transportation service. And so they'll hand out flyers for us. And then you can give your comment by using a little QR code there and go online and make your comment. So they hand these flyers out while they're providing the travel training services, which is just a phenomenal resource for us and also, again, is maximizing our time because these guys are already out there. They're just doing a little bit extra, and we can focus on the internal work of the social media. Next slide. So what's next? How does this all work? So we're in the process right now of getting comments. We'll compile the comments, and then we go and look at the comments and establish whether or not any of the comments are reasonable to meet. And so we take all the comments together, and then we talk to our transit and transportation partners and meet with them and make sure that there is anything there that may or may not be reasonable to meet. Many times, some of the, like last year, there was a comment that was made, but it was something that the Standard TA was already going to take care of anyway. So sometimes it's things that we already know, and those get taken care of. After that, we prepare a report, and the report goes to the policy board for approval. After that, we are able, once we've established that there's no transit needs that are reasonable to meet, then we can distribute the funds, the TDA, Transportation Development Act funds, which are called local transportation funds, to the transit agencies to help provide their services. So next slide, please. So this slide goes over the unmet transit needs definitions. I believe that I've given a little bit on that, so I'm not going to read the slide to you. But again, we're looking locally on what is reasonable to meet and what is not reasonable to meet as we look over the comments. And every jurisdiction is a little bit different. What might be reasonable to meet here or unreasonable to meet here may be different if you're, say, in the Bay Area or something, because just the way the services are laid out and the housing and such. Next slide. So that concludes my report, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from members?
Oh, I have a question.
Mhm.
So when you try to outreach to groups of people, you say you use social media, right? As the
Mhm.
primary. And are there other methods that you guys use to? Maybe I don't recall, but did you mention that other methods you guys use to try to?
No, I didn't mention that, but thank you for pointing it out. Yeah, so we'll use social media. We'll have links on the transit websites, the various transit websites. They'll use our social media and spin off of that. So we try and post, have something on each of the transit operators' website. We'll put flyers up in their buses, and so that's really what we do right now. If there's some other idea you have, I'd be happy to hear it, though.
I was just curious because I mean, for some of the populations, maybe like the location, like maybe in rural areas where the internet is, not always strongest,
Yeah.
or maybe the elderly where, they're not too familiar with social media.
Yes.
Those are just, thoughts I've.
Good point. I see what you're saying now. So ultimately what we want you to do is to have a person fill out a comment. So they can do it online. They can request it in writing. We can put it in writing, or they can call us up. So it does not have to be through the internet at all. So and we're English and Spanish. So we try and use different ways to make sure that we're communicating, because we understand some people don't. Many people that ride the bus are disadvantaged, low income, and they might not have the internet. And yeah, so we need to figure out ways to reach them. Yeah, thank you for the question.
So the MOVE program, is that a new program?
No, the MOVE program was established, actually, I'm the one who started it. And that was, oh my goodness, in 2010. I think it was in 2010. So it's been around. At first, it was not called MOVE. It was just called the CTSA. But it's been around. I think right now they're just, they're in a different phase than they were when we initially started it. Initially, it was something that we were, with the help of Mickey and Jenny, we started with $100,000 and that was it. And then because they wanted to see what we could do. And so each year after we sort of proved ourselves, we were getting more and more and more funds. And so now, with the advent of the Measure L tax dollars, they get Measure L tax dollars, which we didn't have before. So they get that, they get this LTF funds, they have access to other state funds. So there's money there, but initially there wasn't very much. So it was sort of, you know, boots on the ground type of thing. Yeah, I would say for a couple of years. So,
I was
yeah.
just curious if, I've seen that Vivalon ride buses around, is that anything?
That's different. Yeah, there's a lot of medical transport out anywhere you go, Vivalon, there's tons of different names. There's some private vendors. And it just goes to show that the demand of people that need those services, because they're usually people that have a mobility aid, and for whatever reason, they might be too weak, whatever, they cannot use us. And so that's where these sort of niche services come in, and one of which would be the Care Cruiser program. Yeah.
Good report, by the way. Thank you
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. So you talked about you did city council meetings and you just wasn't like any efficient ways to be able to
Ye-
for outreach.
Yeah, it took a lot of time. It took a lot of staff time. And so uh, we're trying to maximize the resources we have. And right now in this department, we are a little bit short-staffed. So I'm the one who's heading it, and usually there would be someone else doing it, so which is completely fine. But so we're really trying hard to do the best we can with the resources we have, and then not use, I shouldn't say use, but be thankful for the help that we get from our community partners who help us like move. They've been just tremendous because, again, they're hitting the people that actually are using their service, and that's really where we need to go. They'll leave flyers out for us at different venues and things like that. Like I said, in English and Spanish.
I was just saying that maybe probably not all city council meetings are televised, probably more than there were before the pandemic. But I'm sure there's more cities, some cities more than others, who have higher viewership.
Yeah.
So I was thinking it might be, instead of trying to reach everybody, be able to maybe target those ones who have the highest viewership, especially places like probably Modesto and Turlock probably have a lot, or even just giving it to staff to say to mention during public comment or something like that. That might be a way to get it. Another one I was thinking about is, do you do outreach to like to senior centers?
Yes. So it's not us doing it. It's usually the Move. The Move group will do that for us. Again, because what part of their charge is as being this sort of specialized service in the county is to do outreach. And so they're constantly going and doing, table events. They'll be at the senior fairs. Last year, we did do a lot of, and we had staff go out and do outreach with them. But these guys, I don't even know how many events they do a month. But when they have the transit needs, they'll give out the information. It's not very difficult to give out and explain, and so they do it for us. So it's just extremely helpful.
I was thinking that maybe also in the senior communities, like some of the independent or the assisted living communities, stuff like that. And if maybe just a little is just leaving the flyers that
Yep.
they have, they have libraries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Leave the flyers out for them. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that could use that service who don't know that's available.
Yeah, and they actually do that for us. So they go out and they'll leave the flyers as they're going out. Sometimes if let's say that they don't have anyone to travel train, they'll just go out, they'll use their time to go out and do outreach. And so again, they'll take these flyers for us and give it out. So it's just a huge thing because especially in senior housing, there's so many places you can leave these things. So yeah, they're they're connected too, because they're dealing with those populations and those, senior centers and things like that more than we do. So it's easier for them to go in and, be able to get this stuff out for us.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
No, so I did have one quick question. And when you guys do the outreaches, and I was going to mention, great presentation, by the way. I was going to mention, I've sat through plenty of city council meetings. I can definitely see where it's a lot of time investment and for very little impact at times. But my question was, is there any tracking done of the outreach and how successful it is, like year over year? Is there any data that shows, okay, we made a change this year, we're not going to
Yeah.
do that, and are we tracking that?
Yeah, yeah, actually, that's a great question. And last year was the first year that we really took this coordinated approach. Prior to last year, we would go out and we would do all the outreach. And, we got comments. But last year, when we had Move doing this for us, the comments skyrocketed. And the comments we got were, I don't want to say better, but they were more informed. You could hear the writer and the writer saying, "This is what we need," and so that's again, people actually going out and saying, "Hi, Melissa. Here, this is some information about da da da. Please make sure you go and comment." And again, I didn't mention this, but the travel trainers, they do have people that speak both English and Spanish. So again, and we don't have a Spanish-speaking representative to go out. So again, that's why we're doing it again this way, because they made a huge, huge, huge difference.
There, follow up?
So the flyer you had, they had the QR code.
Uh-huh.
Was the phone number also on there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So see, not everybody knows how to use the QR code, myself included.
Excellent. Yeah. Any additional questions? Well, again, thank you for that presentation. If
Very
there's
welcome.
no additional questions, we'll move on to item 6B.
So I'm going to ask, Josie's going to help me pass these out. So this item is the Measure L annual report. I know Member Dinan was asking for a presentation on this, and I believe I'm giving a presentation at the Commission on Aging. I think it's in February on this. But this is our Measure L annual report. And for those of you that don't know, Measure L is the local sales tax that we have in this county. And many regions have a local sales tax, but people don't know what the money's doing, which is not a good thing, because you're paying taxes and what do you have to show for it. So what we do every year is we put out this report. The report is important because what we're trying to do is educate the public on how their monies are being spent. So what I'm going to do is go over this, not in a huge great detail, but just sort of go over the highlights of it. So this report is still in draft form. You can see that it says draft on the front, and there's a revision date of December 26th. I say that because it's not the final report, and I don't want anyone to be confused with this one and the final report. We're taking, the final report to our policy board next week, and at that point, the draft will be taken off, and then at that point, it's the final report. But we did want to share this with you during this meeting so that you'd have a preview. So if you go to page 7, I'm sorry, page 7, you see the fiscal year revenues and expenses. So this year, we received $60.4 million in revenue from Measure L, which is just great. I think that they originally thought that it would be somewhere in the $35 million range, and now we're just really up there in what we're getting. You can see the expenditures overall are about $50.5 million, and so the difference between those two numbers is approximately $10 million. But what it does suggest is that the local jurisdictions are using the money and spending the money so that there's not a 60 million and $40 million in expenditures. There is, sort of a closer gap in the expenditures versus revenues. So it's showing that we're out there, we're delivering projects, and our group is doing pretty well. So now I want you to go to page 12. And starting on page 9, we start talking about the member highlights. And so all the jurisdictions receive Measure L funds. So City of Modesto, Newman, Stanislaus County, Houston, each of the jurisdictions do get money from Measure L as well as transit. Transit and the MOVE program does get a Measure L monies as well. This section here is showing you highlights of each of the individual projects. And the projects that we have highlighted here have been given to us by the members or the staff at the various jurisdictions as the ones that they want to highlight, which is also extremely helpful, and it really helps us inform the public of what we're doing. But I want to focus on the City of Modesto Paradise Road Safer Streets for Walking and Biking. This project here is just one that's very easy to see how much it makes a difference. If you look at the before picture, these are students that are crossing the roadway trying to get to Modesto High School. And you can see they're scattered about. There's no consistency on how they're getting across the street. So you could just imagine what that roadway looks like with the and students sometimes don't walk very fast. So, you could just imagine being on that street at that time. So the City of Modesto took this project on and installed ADA curb ramps, upgrade striping, signage, and a bunch of other things to get to this after picture where you can see that the students are clearly in a much more organized way crossing the street to get to Modesto High. So this was one that I took a lot of coordination. It took coordination with City of Modesto, with the transit agencies. It brought a team of people together to make this happen. But this is just one of the examples of the great work that our group of agencies are doing. So like I said, each agency has the sort of a pull out of what they're doing. But this is just one I wanted to showcase to give you a sort of a basic idea of what we're looking at. Then if you go to page 24, there's the local projects, and then there's what we call the regional projects. So the local projects we fund, and that's usually for the streets and roads and maintenance of the streets and roads. And then you have the regional projects, and the regional projects are much larger projects, much more money, etc. The first one is the state, page 24 is the State Route 132 West project. And if you ever drive out that way to get to the Bay Area or Fresno to connect to 5, you can see the work that has been done there. Some great work so that you have 2 lanes in some parts, you have better turnouts, safer turns, that type of thing. This project is of regional significance, and so it is one that is we prioritize funding. Then I want to just focus on State Route 99. I think this is important, and honestly, until I saw this report laid out like this, it didn't necessarily make sense to me. But if you look at simply look at the titles, you see State Route on page 25, Service Mitchell Interchange. So they're creating an interchange on Service Mitchell, to get you to State Route 99. Next page, 26. State Route 99, Briggsmore interchange. So they're working on it, thank goodness, because I take that road and it is not fun getting on the freeway. State Route 99, the Briggsmore interchange. So again, there's a theme happening here. And then on page 27, you have the State Route 99 Beckwith Stanford interchange. So as we go along, you can just now see, okay, oh my goodness, it's going to be 99 is going to be a a street that or a roadway I want to use. These interchanges aren't going to go, being piled up, especially during traffic. People doing craziness, as I'm sure you've all seen. So there's, you can sort of clearly now see what's going to happen on Highway 99. And so these are the big projects. They're going to take a while to do, but they are of regional significance. And then on the page 29, we do highlight the transit services. They don't get as much money as the rest of the regional projects or the local street and roads projects. It's just the way the expenditure plan was written. But they do have a lot of other sources of revenues, especially transit. They can get federal, state grants. They have a lot more capacity to get that. So they can use the Measure L as match and just really leverage their Measure L dollars. So that concludes my report. I'd be happy to go back to anything you wanted me to or answer any of your questions.
Got a question. When does Measure L terminate?
That's a good question. So I'm going to refer back to the first page. I think it's 2034. And that, yeah, it's on page 6, 25 years, tax over 25 years. So it's 2017 through March 31st, 2042. And that Member Dinan is on page 6. It sort of explains a little bit of background on the measure.
Thank you.
Any additional questions on this item?
Okay, I've got a couple questions. So this this allocation that you have here, the financial overview. So those percentages, were they set by the original initiative?
Yes, they're in
Okay.
the expenditure plan.
Okay, so they're set.
Yes.
They cannot be changed. And this, where do I see it? Administration, was that set at 10% like normally it's set?
10%.
It looks like about 10% because overall 60 million. Oh, wait, 1%.
1%.
1%. Oh, okay,
1%.
yeah.
I wish we got 10%. Josie, we'd all get no, just kidding.
But you would. I'm just, so, okay, so now it makes sense that this is set, but personally, I think that this should be something that should be reviewed annually. I mean, how many bicycle paths are we going to build, throughout the county and how are they used? But I assume those might be state regulations that require so many bike paths and stuff to be built.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if Jose Luis can hear us and wants to comment on that.
Yes.
There's a question.
The question is there a state regulation requiring the jurisdictions to build bicycle paths?
Yes, it is.
No, you can actually have no sidewalks or bike lanes if your neighborhood wants that. But the Measure L funds here, we have funds designated that can be used for bike trails. And our jurisdictions may use that for that.
I remember recently, or last year, we allocated a bunch of money on some farm road, some country road for bicycle path. Remember that, Jose?
So we hadn't, I can look that up, but I need
No,
to look.
it's not important. I'm just interested to see, like, obviously but it's set in the thing. So anyway,
Well, if we're just kind of chatting, then I would add, what happens is farmland tends to be encroached upon and turned into residential neighborhoods. But it's not all the infrastructure is put in at that time. And so you can end up years later with schools and homes all in an area that looks like it's meant for farming without facilities for kids to walk and bike to school.
Thank you.
I think that he might be talking about the riverbank area, Luis, remember there was uh, gosh, there was a street that was connecting some schools, but it had no walkways, anything like that.
I think they're talking about Roselle Avenue.
Yes,
It was
that,
going down
yes,
at
yes,
the
that's the one I'm
high
talking
school.
about.
This is purely recreational. This is like heading out
Oh,
toward
okay.
Waterford, stuff like that. It's for bicycle clubs and stuff like that.
Oh,
So,
okay. I see.
and I don't know if it's this funds, I just know it's something we'd allocated out. So there's a surplus every year, looks like.
I wouldn't call it a surplus. A lot of, it looks like it's a surplus, but what happens, I should have explained this, is some of the smaller jurisdictions like Houston, Newman, that don't get a lot of money and that can't fund a project because they're getting maybe a couple $1 million, just say over the whole year, right? Because the way the allocation is. And so what they will do oftentimes is save their money year after year until they have enough of seed money to leverage another source of funds so that they can do the project that they need. So it does appear like it's a surplus, but oftentimes it's that set aside that you'll see them doing. We had a comment earlier today that I will heed in the next version of this for next year. And that is and actually the city manager from Waterford suggested this, is what is left over. And when you look at these projects, we tell you the revenue and expenditures, but we don't tell you what's left over. So we'll start doing that, and I think it'll make a little bit more sense.
What's left over to be accumulated for future
Yes,
projects.
yeah. So if they say, let's just say they have a revenue of $2 million, expenditure, nothing, and they could possibly have, $3 million in there because we're only showing you the revenue of this year.
So then that's my final question is, so I noticed that the cities, especially the smaller cities, had higher expenditures and revenues. Is that previous funding that they had
Yes,
saved?
yes, that's a perfect example of that. Yes, yeah.
It was most of the small cities, except for I think Riverbank.
Yeah.
The large cities, it was.
It's opposite, yes, because they just get so much more money. Yeah.
Good job.
The little cities do a great job with this money. They really do.
And we just got all our streets resurfaced.
Yeah, I know.
And restriped.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Ivan, did you have a comment or a question?
Oh, no, not anymore. I was reading the overview on how the funds are dispersed.
Mhm.
So I was just reading it, so I don't have a question anymore.
Okay.
Thank you though.
Uh-huh.
Anything, Melissa?
Couple questions. First one is in regards to pedestrian ways and bike pathways.
Mhm.
I know that the Palmy River Regional Park is in the middle of doing a master plan update, and they're adding a bunch of bike paths and pedestrian paths to connect all the parks together in that
Mhm.
area. Is there any cooperation with that or any funds going in that direction?
This is another Jose Luis question. Did you hear that, Jose Luis? About
No, I'm afraid her microphone might not be turned on, or was it near her?
I was too far away. How's this?
Okay. I'm listening.
Are there any funds in the Measure L going towards the master plan update for the Tuolumne River Regional Park where they're putting in a bunch of extra pedestrian paths and bike paths?
I do not know. In fact, I'm not sure we would know that without receiving their monthly activity reports, because they don't necessarily tell us how they're going to spend their money beforehand. They tell us how they're spending it during as they're spending.
we could look into that though.
I can ask him next week also. at the
Okay.
meeting. Just,
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, that's a great thing because Jose, Luis, and Blake are also in charge of the bike, BPAC, which is the bike ped committee.
Advisory committee?
Okay, okay. Well, one of the major challenges is getting people onto the paths. What the pathway is through the neighborhoods to
Yeah.
get people onto those paths and then
Yeah.
off the paths to the destinations.
Right, right.
So, okay, I was just curious. And then my only other question is in the unspent expenditures in two areas, the community connections and the rail services, there's projects that just aren't
Yeah.
being done yet?
Yeah, so the rail services, they're not getting any of the money yet because they're not here. So we don't have Ace Rail in Modesto. Once they come to Modesto, then they can start claiming this money. Yeah, and so the community connections, the expenditures are zero now because what that is every few years, we wait for this money to accumulate so that we can do a call for projects. And then the local agencies can come in and make a pitch for a project. But the 1.2 isn't enough to do a call for project. We need it like at least 4 or 5 million, in my opinion. Some people think we should do it at this, but no. Yeah. Good question.
All right. I actually had a couple of questions as well. Actually, first one was a comment is working with the city of Patterson. I know for certain that they were one of the cities that save up some of their Measure L funding for projects as they have time. But my one question was, is this the only oversight committee that sees this, or does the Measure L funding have its own dedicated oversight?
Yeah, great question. So the Measure L does have its own designated oversight committee made of citizens, and that was part of as they were developing the
The language for the.
yeah
for the- okay.
that we had to have that. So it's called the Measure L Oversight Committee. They meet quarterly, and they are the ones who sign off, if you will, at the end of the year after looking at audits and things like that, that everything's copacetic. So we do meet with them and they help advise us. And they helped advise us on this as well, which was really neat.
I'm guessing that committee gets really far into the weeds on this one then.
Yeah, yeah, and they are mentioned towards the end of at the last page, on page 31,
Oh, there
the
it is.
members of the MLOC.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any additional comments on this time? Thank you, and we will move on to item 6C. Like that's that Jose Luis's?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be there today. I'm not feeling 100% yet, and I didn't want to get anyone sick.
Thank you.
So all of my items, except for one, are items that we're bringing back so the Citizen Advisory Committee can be aware of them. This one is a past item. This is the commitment to secure funding for Church Street Mobility Enhancement Project. Next slide, please. So we took this item to our policy board in December because the California Transportation Commission was going to be acting in December, and they told us in November, you know what, let's go to the next slide. I'll give you some more information there. So a little bit first about what is the Church Street Mobility Enhancement Project. This is a project that StanCog applied for on behalf of Stanislaus County to the State Active Transportation Program administered by the California Transportation Commission, a competitive funding round. This is one of the neighborhoods and one of the two specific projects identified in one of the neighborhoods in a neighborhood master plan. I'm messing up the name of the document, but needless to say, the residents in this community really needed work done on Church Street and the kind of adjacent streets. Specifically, they needed sidewalks and curb extensions. A curb extension is when you're approaching a crossing, the sidewalk keeps going out into the intersection up to about where cars would normally be parked. And what it does is it forces a turning vehicle to take a wider turn, slowing it down as it approaches. And it reduces for the pedestrian their exposure in the street. So it has the perception of safety and the real benefit of adding safety. And this is necessary because Church Street intersects with Yosemite, which is State Route 132 on the eastern side of town. And vehicles are just roaring up and down State Route 132, and they will whip onto Yosemite and keep up speed. So this is also a traffic calm. Anyways, that's Church Street. It's sidewalks, curb extensions, pedestrian lightings, signs, flashing beacons, landscaping, and shade. Next slide. So the action that was before the policy board was whether we would commit to finding the $3,258,000 necessary to fully construct Church Street. Next slide. So a little more of the background. So Church Street was identified in, and I'm forgetting the name of the acronym. Could Blake or Gene help me out? What is the CTNA again? It's the
Community Transportation Needs Assessment.
Thank you. The Community Transportation Needs Assessment. This was done back in 2022. It was funded by a grant where we went out into the communities in the unincorporated county and basically asked, what's needed and where. Think of it as the pedestrian version of the Universal Transit Needs Study. Then in January 2024, we, in cooperation with the county, decided to apply for funding to build the Church Street project. To do this, we needed to come up with our own match of about $2 million. That's $1.95 million. And the policy board committed Measure L funds to the same Measure L funds I think we were just asking about, Community Connections, to match a potential grant that we could get from the CTC. We applied. But before that, the state announced that they were going to cut the active transportation program by $400 million, reducing the amount available for this program by $200 million. So there's only like $84 million statewide available for this program. Well, in November, we found out that this project was recommended for funding. Miraculously, it was one of the top 3% of projects statewide identified. However, we were right on the cusp. We were only recommended for partial funding, $4,537,000, still needing $3,258,000. So the question before us was, do we accept a partial award or just say no to the whole project? We recommended to the board to accept the partial award and to commit to funding the rest of the project if needed. And I'll be getting to that in a sec. And the board voted yes to accept the partial award. Next slide. A little bit about how special this project and its application was. Of the 2.5 million of projects that applied, only 84 million were funded. That's 3%. That we were very fortunate to get partial funding from this for this project. Next slide. So there was a discussion of pros and cons with the policy board. What does it mean to accept 4.5 million? What are we on the hook for if we say yes? And what's the likelihood that we're going to have to pay more Measure L funds for this? Because our Measure L funds are precious. Well, first off, the benefits are, hey, this is 4.5 million that we otherwise would not have gotten from the CTC. I met with CTC staff and they discussed a very strong possibility that we could receive more active transportation program funds for this project without having to reapply. The background there is that there sometimes are cost savings in the active transportation program, and when there are, they do their best to try to fund partial projects. There's also the possibility of more money from other sources. We ourselves will be managing a regional funding round coming up that will program congestion mitigation and air quality funds and regional service transportation program funds. These funds are eligible to pay for bike ped projects such as this. The risk is by accepting this, we're saying, hey, we're either going to deliver this thing and fund it somehow, or we're going to give all the money back and not do the project. Next slide. Excuse me, I just need there. So the funding opportunities, the policy board wanted to know what are our funding opportunities for this. And I just got into it. The first is the CTC may have more ATP funding. I'm waiting to hear back, but I'm optimistic that we'll hear about it in early 2025. There's our own funding rounds, which are competitive, transparent, fair, and vetted. I had to bring this up because it sounds like Stancog applying for money from itself, which it is, but our funding rounds are competitive, meaning doesn't matter who's applying. We judge our projects based on merit. We have an independent scoring committee where reviewers are not allowed to score their own projects or even be there during the time when their own projects are being discussed. This project, we're fairly confident would receive funding through just about any competitive round where it was eligible, having scored a 96 out of 100 statewide and been in the top 3% of projects. If it was not successful in this next call for projects, there's still 2 other call for projects between now and when we must come up with the money when construction is needed. So there's this call coming up in 2025. There will be another one in 27 and another one in 29 that this could still be in time for. And of course, the worst case scenario is we would just have to spend more of our Measure L Community Connections funding, which again, that's my worst case scenario. Our hope is to save our Measure L for projects that need Measure L. Next slide. So what we're essentially talking about is risks. And I like talking about risk with 2 variables, the likelihood that something bad will happen and the severity of something bad happening. The likelihood that something bad is going to happen is low, meaning I believe it's very likely we're going to get funding from the CTC. I believe it's very likely this project could get funding from many other sources. So in terms of risk, the likelihood of us having to pay for this out of Measure L is low. And then the benefits in terms of this risk are, I'll just say, however we pay for this is a great project, and we're happy to have the funding from the CTC. So our recommendation to the policy board, which they accepted, was yes, we should fund this project. Next slide. Any questions on the Church Street?
Any questions from members?
Good report there, Jose. So I have a question. So on the funding opportunities, under worst case scenario, you only had use Measure L funds.
Yeah.
I didn't see in there give the funds back.
Yeah, I would say in even the worst case scenario, it would. I actually could not imagine our policy board having done the environmental design and right of way, simply throw up our hands and say, you know what, this project in a neighborhood where collisions and accidents are happening and there's safety issues, that we're just not going to do it. So I didn't really put that as a realistic worst case scenario.
I wanted to ask.
Right.
Well, I know that there's, with all the fuel efficiency and all the other stuff going on out there, that, funding is going to be in the budget deficit. There's another $30 to $50 billion per year for the next couple of years. I don't see the state, I don't know how it works, but I can see the state trying to withhold funding. They easily try to get the lowest lying fruit.
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about funding here. There's a adjective I like to use, which is fungibility. And my favorite case of fungibility was a Simpsons episode where Homer didn't want to give money to a homeless person because he was just going to spend it on beer. And he said, oh, no, I already have beer money. This is going to be food money. And, you laugh because whatever money a person has, we can spend it on whatever we want. But when we're talking about federal and state transportation funding, there are clear silos that are protected. So these funds for active transportation program come from SB 1, Senate Bill 1, that was passed. It was tested through a potential recall of it. And then at the same time, sort of a lockbox law got passed, meaning the state cannot go raid SB 1 dollars. What happened with ATP is actually the opposite happened a few years back. The state gave ATP like $1 billion more when it had a surplus. And then it recently had a deficit, and so it clawed back a bunch of that money, impacting this funding round. But that said, ATP, its SB1 funds aren't going away. They're protected lockbox. They come directly from your gas tax and registration fees, which are also adjusted for inflation. So we're going to have ATP consistently over the years. What's happening here, and I'll tell you, I couldn't put it in writing, is that we are aware of a project in LA County that I believe was a $10 million project that just did not deliver on time, and they have to give their money back to the CTC. And my understanding is we're going to have first dibs on that 10 million. And the governor can't claw that money back.
I'm very well aware of that because I was out there collecting ballot signatures for SB1. So I was one of my organization, League of California Cities, was the leading proponent of that ballot measure. So thank you.
Oh, and thank you for your support for that. I'll just say, whenever we talk about general fund, that is the shakiest, most non-committable or most flexible, easily clawed back fund, and that's there's certainly that money is certainly fungible.
Any additional questions on comments? Ivan?
Oh, I have a question. So when a project gets a high score or like it's a strong merit, what exactly are the details regarding that? What gives a project like a high score, you could say?
Sure. To give your answer full full shrift instead of short shrift, I actually need to pull up the ATP funding guidelines, but I'm gonna try to hit them from memory. Safety is a big one. Whether it's located and directly benefiting a disadvantaged community is another one. Public outreach and a demonstrated kind of commitment and interest from the public. And we hit all those very solid. It's high for safety. We did a healthy, aggressive amount of public outreach with the community transportation needs assessment. And we are definitely inside of a disadvantaged community. Now, there's other measurements too, like safe routes to school and how much it gets used. And I'm afraid I can't remember all those. I'll also say it's not enough to just have a high score. This is like an ultra high score. It's almost a perfect score. We had the advantage of having consultant help. Paid consultants are really good at making sure we get every single possible point. And so your average local agency staff has a hard time scoring something like a 97.
Additional questions or comments? Well, I'm just going to use this opportunity to mention curb extensions. When designed properly, can be very, very useful. Unfortunately, I've seen a couple instances where traffic engineers got a little over aggressive with them, and where they get to the point where you literally have to, Roseburg and Virginia here in Modesto, if you're going on Virginia and making a right onto Roseburg, I think it's Roseburg, wherever O'Brien's Market is, you literally have to drive into the other lane, or you have to drive on the sidewalk because they were too aggressive with it. So just mentioning that, maybe make sure the traffic engineers don't get overly into that. But other than that, Jose Luis, thank you for that excellent presentation.
Welcome. Understood.
We'll move over. I know that's out of your control, but just thought and use the opportunity. So, all right. So moving on to item 60 then.
So this is me again. This is another past item that we're bringing back for the benefit of the Citizen Advisory Committee. This is the local partnership program, specifically the competitive portion of the LPP. We brought an item to the policy board asking them to prioritize the nomination of LPP competitive projects. Next slide. And the next slide. So the action that was taken was to nominate in priority order first the 7th Street Bridge, the sponsor is the county, and the second is the Modesto the Modesto and Ceres stations, and the sponsor is the Rail Commission. Next slide. So the background is there is a funding program called the Local Partnership competitive program. That, you know, the acronym is LPP-C, Local Partnership Program Competitive. This is separate from another one I'm going to be bringing up, which is the LPP Formula. I'll be talking about that in a little bit. Statewide, there's 195 million, and StanCog is one of the short list of regions eligible to apply for this. And we get to apply because we're part of the club of self-help counties, counties that have voted to tax ourselves and dedicate those funds to transportation. This is a reward for us being one of those counties. It's competitive, so you're not guaranteed funding. You don't actually have to be the lead agency. StanCog doesn't have to be the agency delivering the project, but we have to be the agency nominating the project. If we nominate more than one project, then we have to prioritize those nominations, and those apps were due November 20th, so we had to do this item back in November. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about how we went about doing that, our methodology. Next slide. First, you know, we did a look back. What have we nominated in the past? In 2022 is the North County Corridor Project. They applied for 25 million. They were not funded. Before that was McHenry, which was applied for in 2020, was funded for 2 million. And before that was the State Route 99 Fulkerth Interchange Project for 3 million, which was also funded back in 2018. What all these projects have in common is that they were top ranked in our Measure L strategic plan. Our Measure L strategic plan is where our board lays out its priorities for the Measure L projects and how we go about going after funds just like this, the local partnership program. Next slide. So in identifying which projects, we look through the guidelines. The guidelines say the project has to have a one-to-one match, meaning for every $1 you're asking from LPP, you should have $1 of your own. So another way of saying that is 50% match. It needs to be shovel ready. It can't be something that you're hoping to do in the near future. It has to be something you are doing in the near future, like next 2 years. Your funding has to be committed, solid. If you don't have all the money in hand, then you have to come up with the money shortly after, or you risk losing the money, the award. The most you can ask for is 25 million, and all funding that you don't have yet has to be secured by July 2027. That doesn't sound very far off, but that's coming up really fast. So we looked at our candidates, and the Measure L strategic plan says top project is State Route 132. But State Route 132 is actually not a good candidate for the program because of these guidelines. State Route 132 is in the right-of-way phase, but not ready for construction. It is not, we might say shovel ready and that the environmental is clear, but it is not ready for shovels until we get some more money set aside. So after going through the Measure L, after looking through the Measure L strategic plan, we looked for other projects. There really aren't other projects shovel ready. We have projects with shovels. The North County Corridor Project, they are going to be doing a groundbreaking this year. If anything, they're too ready for this program. So we went through our Federal Transportation Improvement Program. It's our list of projects that have been funded by StanCog. And we looked through recent funding rounds, which also have projects funded by StanCog. And from there, we went and tried to identify projects that fit these criteria and also fit our policy board's kind of implied preferences and priorities. Next slide. First project at the top. We've heard Jenny Canoyer talking about it. If you're not familiar with the 7th Street Bridge, then we've failed to do our job. This project is very important to our region. It's very much needed. It's 117 million. That's a crack in the bridge right there. I get nervous driving over that part every time. It's being jointly done between the city of Modesto and the county. Obviously, region important, obviously has safety and mobility benefits. You can't drive an ambulance over this thing. It's not rated strong enough for an ambulance. So emergency services have to go around. It is shovel ready. They are dealing with utility and the railroad right now, but that's going to resolve itself in the next year or two. They have all the federal funds needed. And they also have their local funds needed, but this will free up the Measure L funding that the county and city had set aside to match federal dollars. It allows them to spend their Measure L maintenance dollars on other bridges. Next slide. So the other one is the Modesto and Sirius stations. We don't think of these stations as being $119 million projects, But for passenger rail to come to these stations, there are expensive rail improvements for passenger rail needed. They are 90% funded. They are regionally important. They have big benefits for air quality and mobility. These projects are they're going to be they'll perform excellent on all sorts of scoring. They will score well in all sorts of categories, and they are shovel ready. They just need a little more money to get there. Next slide. So policy board voted to prioritize those projects in that order, the bridge and then the stations. There wasn't a clear dollar amount at the time because both of these sponsors were still getting their financial strategies straightened out. Later on, we met with them and we convinced the two sponsors to keep their combined requests under 25 million. That's because no county ever has received more than 25 million in a cycle. In reducing the request, the Rail Commission reduced their funding request to just the Modesto station as opposed to doing both stations. Next slide. And here's the bridge again, and I'll take questions.
Question?
Just a comment. I would not even walk under that 7th Street Bridge.
I
I'd
think,
walk on it, but not under it.
I think I'm going to be going around it.
If there's no other questions, I will thank you, Jose Luis, for that excellent presentation.
Thank you. So we're on to local partnership program again, but the formulaic. Next slide. And the next slide. So the policy board action that they took was to program $4,567,000 of local partnership program formulaic funds to the State Route 132 West project, specifically the 99-132 interchange. I'm going to explain the process of how we got there. Next slide. So the background is, you know about the local partnership program. You know that it's a reward for being a self-help county. You might not have known that we get money on a formulaic basis. They just will cut us a check when we ask for it as a reward for being a self-help county and having Measure L. This is directly to incentivize other counties to do the same thing. What they do is they also set aside some money as a bonus should a county become a new kind of measure sales tax county. And then if that bonus doesn't get used up, they redistribute it to the self-help counties. So for the years 23-24 and 24-25, you'll see there's 1.186, 1.185. There's basically $83,000 more coming to us than in the second years. It looks like we're getting less money as the time goes by. That's not exactly the case. What happened is there's enough money left over of the bonus that was not taken for the 23-24 and 24-25 years. It's been redistributed to us. The 25-26 and 26-27 years are estimates, and they may go up by 80,000 each, depending on how things go in the state. So that said, of this estimate, we are allowed to program 4,567,000. The first 2 years need to be programmed and allocated by April 30th, 2026. That doesn't sound too far away, but that's coming up. And then the second 2 years, similarly by 2028. Next slide. So the methodology of, okay, how do we decide where to program this is sort of similar to how we did it for the competitive. Is there a question? No? Okay, next
No
slide.
question.
How did we do it in the past? Well, for the years 21-23, we programmed that money to State Route 132, 4.4 million specifically. And in the year 2019, we programmed 2.5 million to the Falkirk 99 interchange. What do these projects have in common? They were top projects in the strategic plan, and they fit the criteria for LPP formulaic. Next slide. So the guidelines similarly have one-to-one match, but you don't quite have to be as shovel ready as you did for the competitive. The guidelines essentially are more flexible. Our candidates really are State Route 132, but turns out we have two State Route 132 projects. We have the interchange and we have the Gates Dakota 2-lane extension. So the question is really, which of these two projects do we want to program these funds to? Now, you might think we should program it to construction because construction is where we need money. But the way the guidelines work for these funds, it actually works better to put this money on the active phases that are happening right now. And what that does is it frees up our Measure L money. So let me show you a little bit how that works. I realize this might be complicated. If you're not following along or you don't want to get into this sort of minutia, feel free to not listen to this next slide. But if you're interested in how we're spending your Measure L dollars and why we're doing it this way, this next slide is going to go into that detail. Let me show you. So this is a busy table. At the very top, what you need to know is that is the environmental design phase, and the left-hand side is current, and the right-hand side is proposed. The environmental design phase is 4.2 million. We're not changing it. It's there just for your information. As you can see, there's state dollars, Measure L dollars, and some of that LPP formulaic funds paying for the environmental design. It's an active phase, but we are pretty far along the way in design. And this is for the 99-132 interchange specifically. Right of way, we are in the middle of, and that has 12.6 million of Measure L, 3.2 million of LPP formulaic already, and some COVID dollars from the STIP, and a $7 million earmark. Right of way is happening right now. We will be purchasing property during 2025, securing right of way. Now, what's interesting here is we have Measure L dollars here. We don't actually need to spend our Measure L dollars on right of way if we have this LPP formulaic, these LPP formulaic dollars available to us. So what we proposed to the board and what they voted to do was to increase the amount of LPP formulaic by 4.567 million and decrease the Measure L by 4.567 million. Essentially, what we ended up doing is we used our Measure L to go get other funds, and now we got other funds. We can take that Measure L and move it to the construction phase. Measure L doesn't have the same timely use of funds requirements that these CTC dollars do. So we can put it out in construction to go match future dollars, and we can use up these LPP formulaic dollars before they expire. So really what we're doing is we're essentially freeing up our Measure L for construction. It also has a side benefit. Measure L dollars are going to get tight in the next few years. We're probably going to have to bond for it. By moving this money into construction, it hopefully lessens the amount we have to bond or slows down when we need to start bonding. This is pretty inside this is inside baseball sort of funding, but this is the sort of programming decisions that we're making with your taxpayer dollars. Next slide. Any questions? And this is aerial of the interchange now and the interchange when it will be constructed.
Any questions on this item? Melissa, you look very intense in there. What's that? All I can say is I live close to that area, so I'm really looking forward to that interchange being done. All right. If there's no questions from the committee, I will say thank you again, Jose Luis, for another excellent presentation.
I'm not going anywhere yet.
All right. Moving on to the next item. Yes.
Me again. This is the annual listing of obligated projects. I only do this once a year, but I do it in January. This is, next slide. This is going to have some jargon in it. And let me pull up my notes here so I can talk about the jargon. Yeah. So what you need to know is an obligation is, you could think of it as an allocation, an encumberment. It is the locking up of budget authority and getting permission to expend local dollars to be replaced with federal dollars. Federal dollars work on a reimbursement basis. So if you want to go do a transportation project, you go fill out some paperwork. Having been told that you are receiving money. And then when you get that final signature, that signature and date tells you you can start work and start invoicing the federal government. So an obligation is basically an agency showing that it's going to start federally reimbursable work and start invoicing the federal government. As as the designated federal metropolitan planning organization for this region, we are required to produce an annual listing of which projects are obligated for the public. Next slide. And I just found out that we failed to include Houston on this list. Houston deserves a line there, but they obligated 0, and that's the oversight. But what you need to know is last year we obligated 100 million. That's a little more than the 66 we did the year before. Obligating 100 million doesn't mean we spent 100 million. It means that our agencies can spend 100 million starting last year. This is an alphabetical way of looking at it. You can see that the biggest agencies, Stanislaus County, I actually found out that 32 million that obligated, actually probably about 9 million of Waterford's 9.6 belongs to the county. So the county actually obligated something like 41 million in 2024. They're by far our largest deliverer of federally funded projects in the region. Next slide. Here's another way of looking at it visually. Again, that the county's number should go up even to 41. Next slide. The other way of looking at it is what type of work are we doing in our region? We're doing mostly maintenance and operations and a lot of bridges. In fact, if you add those two up together, it comes to more than $70 million of the 100 million. So another way to think, and then, sorry, then there's planning and TDM. TDM is Gene's program. That's our status cruise, where we pay for van pooling, and the May is Bike Month and other incentives to not drive a car by yourself, but to walk, bike, take transit, carpool. The roadway project, or the roadway funding there, that's State Route 132, the money that we obligated, the federal funds we obligated in 2024 for the 2 right-of-way projects. And then transit, those are buses being purchased and maintenance of the fleet. Next slide. So if you start taking these pie slices and start coloring them in, the maintenance operation, that's really just maintaining what we've got, right? And operational improvements. The bridges, that's really just maintaining what we got, replacing bridges that need replacement, fixing bridges that need fixing. The transit, that's not transit expansion. This is not ACE. This is just our regular bus service, our regular TDM, our regular van pooling. All 3 of those slices are really just keeping the transportation system working the way it should be. The roadway, that's an expansion project that'll effectively bypass neighborhoods to improve State Route 132 for safety and goods movement. And the planning TDM, you could also think of that as us just kind of keeping things going. So really, most of our transportation funds are meant to keep the system you have in good working order. Next slide. Any questions?
Do you have any questions from the committee on this item? All right, seeing none, I will thank you again. Sorry, Luis, for another excellent presentation. You have one more, or is that your last one?
That's it. And I know that was a lot, but this is to make up for past meetings that we weren't able to have. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I appreciate the reports. I appreciate, even though you're under the weather, that you were able to join us this evening. We were able to have this meeting and get this information. So thank you very much for that.
We know who the money man is.
Right. Yes. Well, we have a comment.
So Jose, I know it's a good report when you anticipate my questions. Because when I saw Houston and then I saw Waterford, which is about half the size of us, kind of got the hair up in the back of my neck. But as usual, you anticipated my questions. So very good report. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm gonna fix the Waterford and the Houston lines in the version that goes to our policy board and get that cleaned up on the website.
All right. And so that does look like that was the last report. So we'll move on to item number 7, management report.
There is no report. Thank you.
Well, item number 8, member reports. Are there any reports from any of the members? Seeing none, we will go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Thanks for the great meal.
Yes. Thank you, Josephine, for the video.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, Josie.